not this year, but next. We're now joined by Kansas State Director of Athletics, Gene Taylor. He's been on this show. We love having him on the show. Paul Catalina, Craig Smoak. I'm David Smoak. And Gene, thank you very much. How you been?
Good. How you guys doing? Good to be back on. How's everything?
We're doing great. We're doing really, really well. How much does the exit agreement with Texas and Oklahoma clear the air for doing now more with the Big 12, whatever that might be?
Well, I think it just makes a little more clarity is that when you can start, whatever, moving forward with the new 4 members, and scheduling is going to be a little more clear starting, beyond the 23-24 season, and whatever else that Brett has in his vision as our commissioner and as we have as ADs. I think it just the uncertainty is kind of cleared up, but we know exactly when they're exiting. Obviously, the 4 members are coming in this July, and then we can just kind of plan for the future. So I think it's a good thing.
Does that future, whether it's soon or 5, 6, 7 years down the line, include more teams than the 4 just coming in your estimation?
Yeah, that's a great question, and obviously, there's a lot of speculation out there with what's going on with the Pac-12, probably more than anything, which I don't know. And Brett really hasn't been focused on anything other than trying to wrap up the Texas and Oklahoma, and the TV deal really have been 2 big priorities. And so, I'm guessing that with the uncertainty and what's happening, and you hear one thing where their TV deal is not going to be great, and then you hear that it is, and then I think they put out a statement where the remaining 10 said we're not going anywhere, we're sticking together, and so I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where the next few weeks and months go in terms of what possibilities are that are out there.
Take them, or just in general, take any potential expansion or whatever off the table. Just how much of a relief or a feeling of a safety net is it, knowing that there are other negotiations going on that maybe are going well or not well, like you said, who the heck really knows what's going on, but to have had the TV deal done early as you guys elected to do, how much does that feel like the right decision at this point in time, looking back on that?
Well, I think it looks, better and better. Obviously, I think I read an article where some people were asking Brett or questioning Brett, did you move too soon and did you leave too much on the table? I think with the uncertainty of the TV market and the fact that we got both ESPN and Fox, 2 great linear networks that are, been very supportive, I think it's huge. And then I think the future is even going to be brighter, whether as we continue to have success in the Big 12, just where we are with basketball right now. Obviously, the football season we have, we're bringing in, 4 new members that I think can bring a lot to the table. So, and it wasn't a 10 or 15 year agreement. I think it's 5 or 6 years that we'll be able to be back in the market after we continue to build this brand. And I think that's huge, that their next round could be even bigger than what we currently have.
How hard is it to project what people are going to consume in the future? The argument of linear, the argument over streaming, there's many that feel like streaming is going to be the biggest thing in the future. What kind of discussions are there surrounding those types of things, and how far do you guys look at in that regard?
Well, I think, obviously you want to be flexible, right? You want to be able to have the ability to do both and deliver your product to your fans in whatever form you can get it in. And I think there's still always going to be the linear model for, you've got the very different markets out there. You've got your older market. You got your, my kids don't even have, basic cable anymore. It's everything, that's, through YouTube or whatever the mediums are. And so I think you'll be able to deliver as many ways as you possibly can to your market, but you have to be flexible enough to be able to do that. And, whether it's ESPN or Fox or you add in another, streaming company, that you write in the flexibility to be able to do that in your contract, which I know Brett is so attuned to that he's already thinking about that. So that's what's been great about having him as a commish, is his vision and his understanding of some of these things is really, really what we needed.
We asked Gubernek yesterday, Texas Tech's president, this. Did Brett Yormark even surprise you, what you thought he might be able to scratch and uncover more revenue flow that may not even have been something on the table for anyone else?
I think he did. And again, I don't sit there and I just know what was talked about when Texas and Oklahoma announced that they were leaving. Oh, you're 50% less of a product now from the media folks, and you're not going to get the deal that you thought you were going to get, losing Texas and Oklahoma for him to be able to get us not only where we are currently and then a little bit more over the next 5 to 6 years once it kicks in, I think is huge. And then I think he wrote in, and again, I don't have the details of the contract, some flexibility, whether if there is an expansion to be able to bring in some teams in, that doesn't detract from the money we have. It actually adds to it. And then the ability to add a streaming partner maybe down the road and some of those things. I think those, again, his vision and understanding of all that really, I think has put us in a really good position.
Director of Athletics at K-State, Kansas State, Gene Taylor with us on 365 Sports.
How much fun is it to win a Big 12 football championship?
Well, it was a lot of fun. It would have been nice if I could have been there in person, but it is what it is. But it was fun, and I'm just so happy for Chris. And obviously the game itself was just, if you're just a football fan of neither team, you saw a tremendous football game and an exciting football game. So to be able to pull a win in a game like that, the way we did, the goal line stands, the last second field goal was phenomenal, and then just the residual for our ability to. Obviously, we wish we'd have played a little bit better against Alabama in the Sugar Bowl, but as you guys know, winning a conference championship is hard, and to be able to do it, in Chris's fourth year, it's so fun to see, and the way our players just kind of bonded together throughout the whole season was a joy to watch.
What would you tell someone from the outside about Manhattan, Kansas, and your university that they may not know?
Well, first of all, it's a tremendous place to live in terms of quality of life, in terms of just the type of community that Manhattan is. It's phenomenal. And it's not, people think, oh, you're flat. We've got rolling hills. We've got, we got very different topography here in Manhattan. It's just a cool place. But what I love about this place is the people in Manhattan and the state around us, communities around us, they're all in. They wear their purple with a lot of pride. They care a great deal about Kansas State, not just athletics, but the university. There's a tremendous amount of pride in who we are as an institution. And so when you can win a Big 12, that pride just continues to grow, and just the excitement level, and it's rolled over to basketball. What Coach Tang has done for us this year in basketball, it's been a fun year so far.
Well, we know all about him, and I know they're kind of in a little bit of a funk, but they'll be fine. He's an incredible person, great coach as well. When you mentioned, when Paul brought up Manhattan, when Brett Yormark's name was first announced and his background, some of us had questions that, what the hell does he know about Lubbock or Waco or Manhattan or name one, right?
Yeah.
Stillwater. To me, Gene, when I've talked to him, it is almost as if he's embraced those towns. Do you agree?
Oh, 100%. Obviously he came here and he's been hitting the towns here for basketball. He loves it. He constantly is amazed at a couple of levels. One, the enthusiasm that our fan bases have for our teams. And it's deep. You've been there, you've watched, you've been in those crowds. People come to Manhattan or teams come in. It's hard to win here. It's hard for us to go down to wherever, Waco, Baylor, Lubbock. It's the crowd enthusiasm and the enjoyment that he has watching that environment or those environments has been fun. And then the other thing he talks about is the investment we've all made, not just at Kansas State, but in the Big 12, in our facilities and our student athletes. He's been absolutely blown away by the amount of investment our donors and our institutions have made to make our programs better, both physical space and just quality of opportunities for our athletes.
I know that when Texas and Oklahoma story popped, that a lot of people were looking around like, my God, what's going to happen? I know you were and others were. But when Baylor, Oklahoma State play one year, then TCU and K-State play the next year, even though the TV deal's still down to what happens with eyeballs and numbers and all of that, how much did that beam pride with those remaining schools that weren't Texas and OU?
Quite a bit. I think, and that's kind of what we talked about is, we're more than just Texas and OU. We're a quality conference across the board. And yeah, those are great programs and big brands, but we're just as talented and ability to win championships as they are. And we all know, Texas has been a while since they've won a Big 12 football championship. Obviously and so I think when we can have two teams other than Texas and Oklahoma, at least since they've made that announcement, be in these championships and play for championships, it's huge. And it just continues to elevate us as a conference without them being in our future.
Would your Advil budget had gone up, conference-wide, had that not been the case? Had it kind of stayed status quo with Oklahoma? You're like, here we are trying to sell the rest of us, and then nothing has changed. We can't shake out of the national narrative.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have, because, we talk about that as ADs but yeah, I think it'd have been like, oh boy, how are we going to be reviewed and looked at? And just again, look at our basketball program right now. Collectively as a conference, it's literally nobody can even question that we're the best conference by far in America. And certainly, Texas is, right now at the top of the conference, but there's a lot of really good teams behind them. And they go into Texas Tech the other night and get beat. We go into Texas and beat them early in the season. So I think it just continues to reinforce that this is a really, really good conference with really good programs with great brands other than OU and Texas.
Gene, when Brett does decide, or when Brett Yormark mentions, or you or Mac Rhodes or whoever mention the fourth time zone or out west or whatever, how would you say on a scale of 1 to 10, if that's even possible, is how serious that really is? Because a lot of it depends on what maybe the Pac-12 can do, and yet you have to worry about what's best for the Big 12.
Yeah, I think, as ADs, we just kind of look at the reality of it, right? Did we really expect the Big Ten to take UCLA and USC? Didn't see that coming. Obviously, we didn't see Texas and OU going to the SEC. And so I think our need and our willingness to be flexible and be open-minded about some of this stuff, Brett's helping us with that, just on what he talks about and kind of how he sees the landscape and understands the landscape, that we need to be flexible. We need to be willing to look at those options should they present themselves, and how much they make sense for us, for our student athletes, for travel, and all those things are a big part of that. And then what do they bring to the table? If they're available, are they additive, and they're going to bring more to us as a conference than reduction? And I think that's going to be part of the conversation. So if something of that pops, then as ADs, we need to be honest with Brett and have really, to the point conversations about how we feel about whatever direction he sees us being able to go.
Are travel costs ever discussed? Because you hear that and then you go, man, people just fly all over the place these days. Some of the smaller sports, or I guess non-revenue sports, their schedules are more prevalent as far as games per week in some cases. Is that even really thought about when it comes to expanding and getting bigger?
Yeah, it is. Obviously, football's a little different because you're already chartering, and, you go out and rent a charter. It's not going to be that much different whether you charter out to West Virginia, you charter out to BYU for football. Most of us charter men and women's basketball. So, again, it's more of a time commitment, and what time are you getting back, and what time do they have to get back into class. But as you get into your other sports, the golfs and the tennises and the baseballs, and how much they have to travel west becomes a concern, or at least a conversation point of, okay, how much is this going to add to our budget? Where's that money going to come from? I know it was with the Big Ten ADs, because I've got colleagues in the Big Ten, and that was definitely how are we going to make sense of this going from Rutgers to Los Angeles with some of our teams. And I think you just have to work through with that, but work through that with how you schedule from a creative perspective and travel partners and some of that. But we'll see how that goes.
You're on the College Football Playoff Committee. Is that another 1 year left? Is that a 2 year? How many years left do you have that role?
Collectively, it's a 3-year deal, and I've got 1 more year left, and It's been a phenomenal experience. I wish I could stay on it forever, but unfortunately you don't get to.
As someone who's been on it, do you feel like expanding the 12 will make it easier or more complicated?
It's a great question. Obviously, it's never easy because everybody kind of focuses on the top 4, and usually get to the end of the year, there's 5, 6, maybe 7 teams maybe being talked about. Now you're going to have 12 teams. You're probably going to have 20 teams. I think it becomes much more difficult to look at the resumes as you get down to, 9, 10, 11, and 12, because 13, 14, and 15, their resumes are going to look very similar. It's one thing to look at an 11 and 0, 11 and 1, 12 and 0 team. It's another thing to look at 4 or 5 teams that all are, 9 and 3, 8 and 4, and they've beaten similar teams, and their strength of schedules are very similar, and the wins on the road, and the things that we look at, to determine. It's going to be a big discussion to figure out how do you differentiate a 9 and 3 team and an 8 and 4 when you start getting into the those lower, not lower, but the 9, 10, 11, 12 teams that also look very much similar, like 13, 14, 15, and so on.
Gene, thank you. It's always great to pick your brain and get the insight and experience from you. Keep up what you're doing. Tell Jerome Tang we said hello. I know you'll see Baylor Tuesday in Manhattan, and we appreciate your time every time we can get you. Thank you.
Love being out with you guys, and go Big 12, and we'll make sure we're a great host to Baylor up until the final bucket goes in and we beat you guys.
Thank you very much.
All right, see you guys.
Classic. That's Gene Taylor, Director of Athletics at Kansas State, with us on 365 Sports.
That was great to have Gene.